Venezuela is hosting the 25th Sao Paulo Forum. A fire in Lima destroys hundreds of homes. And an interim president is named in Tunisia following the president's death. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. The governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rosselló, announced on Wednesday that he will step down on the 2nd of August, after a week and a half of mass protests that demanded his resignation. The news brought many celebrations overnight, which extended into Thursday as people continued to gather on the streets of the capital. Protesters had been waiting for the governor to accept that he had to go since Tuesday night. The protests were triggered by revelations of a chat controlled by Rosselló, where he and his officials made insulting and misogynistic comments, but they grew to express widespread frustration at the government's handling of the economic crisis.
We are happy, but as I said, we are not going to leave the streets just because Ricky resigned. There are still things left to do. There are billions in debt that they themselves created. So we need to audit the debt, still need to put these people on trial who forced us to take to the streets. The people cannot only take to the streets, they need to demonstrate and go to the polls and show that this is a new movement, that Puerto Rico won't take this laying down.
Addressing a television audience, Governor Rosselló said his resignation will come into effect at 5 p.m. on August 2nd in order to allow a smooth power transition. He named Justice Secretary Wanda Vazquez as the new governor. He finally conceded to the pressure after the legislature began an impeachment process against him, and as protesters kept up the pressure outside of the government offices in La Fortaleza.
With sadness, I am announcing that I will be resigning from the position of governor effective on Friday, August 2nd, 2019 at 5 in the afternoon. In the coming days, I will be attending to pending issues to facilitate an orderly transition. At this moment, I am fulfilling my mandate to allow for the succession process established by our Constitution, to swear in at the moment the person who will complete my term.
Earlier, we spoke with Rafael Bernabe from the Citizens Victory Movement, who was on the streets of San Juan as people celebrated the governor's resignation.
Well, today we are celebrating. There's a huge march which was called before his resignation, but people decided that it was important to have it anyway. And of course, the problem that we face right now is that the ruling party, the party of former Governor Rosselló, is still in power. And that party has an agenda which includes neoliberal policies such as privatization of the public school system, cutting the budget of the public university, cutting pensions, and so on. All of this in order to pay for Puerto Rico's public debt, which is unpayable. It can only be paid by imposing terrible sacrifices on the people. And the policy of paying that debt is overseen by a board appointed by the Congress of the United States, which we call La Junta. So what we face now is a need to transfer the struggle that we have led victoriously against Governor Rosselló and to turn that into a struggle against the junta and against the austerity policies of the junta and against the neoliberal policies of the government and the junta. And people are very, very enthusiastic about this victory, and we are very confident that we will be able now, on the basis of this victory, to continue that struggle in the next year and the next few months. Now that he has resigned, or will resign, will move out of the office very soon, on August 2, the impeachment process really doesn't have any function. What does have a function is the fact that the report made for the legislature indicated that the government may have committed several illegal acts. And that has to go to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice has to investigate if, in fact, the governor has broken the law. And if he has broken the law, then he has to be accused. He has to be indicted for these illegal actions, and there has to be a trial, and he may even go to jail because of some of these illegal actions. So the impeachment process as such stops, but the investigation of possible illegal actions is still there, has to be completed, and we will see what the results of that is.
The 25th Sao Paulo Forum is underway in Venezuela. Around 700 delegates from over 120 social movements and leftist parties from around the world are in Caracas to participate in the event, which is being held until Sunday. Under the slogan "For the Peace, Sovereignty, and Prosperity of the Peoples," the forum will focus on the Colombian peace process, the movement to free former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and the U.S. economic blockade against Cuba and Venezuela. There will also be workshops and talks about indigenous and Afro-Latino issues, social justice, and journalism in the region. The forum was launched by the Workers' Party of Brazil in 1990 in the city of Sao Paulo, and it serves as a platform to share alternatives to neoliberalism. It has been 6 months since a dam in the Brazilian town of Brumadinho collapsed and took the life of 270 people. The dam was owned by the Vale Mining Company, and relatives are still demanding justice. Our correspondent, Andre Vieira, is in Brumadinho.
Hello, we are reporting from Brumadinho, a city here in the southeast of Brazil. That's exactly 6 months ago, was devastated by one of the gravest environmental crimes ever in Brazil. A dam of the mining company Vale collapsed and took the lives of about 200 people. The family members of those victims are meeting in the city to remember their loved ones in a commemorative event. This tragedy is considered an environmental crime and not an accident, as the family members of the victims point out that the mining company Vale knew about the dangers and risks of those mining activities. They also say their family members were not given proper security measures for the work they did. That is why they consider this a crime, a foreseeable crime which Vale knew could happen. So today these people are meeting here in Brumadinho to remember the victims of this tragedy, but most importantly to demand justice for those who are seeking compensation from the mining company. So today is a very special day for these people, while various social movements are here to show their support and demand justice for this crime.
Brumadinho, a city of about 36,000 people, is located in the state of Minas Gerais. It was here that 6 months ago a dam owned by the Vale company burst and took the lives of 270 people. And even after all this time, some bodies are still missing. But Vale was also responsible for another dam collapse in the city of Mariana back in 2015. Social organizations have condemned these tragedies.
The capitalist system does not make itself responsible for any tragedy. All they care about are extraordinary profits. They don't care about the people, and it's because of that that we must organize.
The damage left by this tragedy, considered by many as an environmental crime, are still felt by the inhabitants of Brumadinho.
My neighborhood, which is very small, lost 7 people. Some were children. My uncle lost his partner and his son. This is something very sad and people want justice.
I had a second cousin that was in elementary school, and they still haven't found his body yet. I see their parents cry every day.
A large part of the victims of the collapse were workers of the Vale Mining Company. Gleidson lost his brother in the tragedy.
We have felt anger. Ramon was 34 years old and he had been working in the mining company for over 13 years. He left a 5-year-old daughter, a wife, all his dreams and ambitions behind.
On Thursday, various events are being held in remembrance of the victims in Brumadinho.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a few. Welcome back. Let's go back to Venezuela, where our correspondent Leonel Ratamal has more from the Sao Paulo Forum, currently underway in Caracas.
We're still here covering the 25th edition of the Sao Paulo Forum. It's being held here in Caracas as an act of reaffirmation and support for the Venezuelan people, as many leaders from the 120 political parties and social movements taking part have said. Let's remember that this forum is taking place just a week after the non-aligned movement also met in Caracas and expressed its support for Nicolas Maduro's government and the Venezuelan people. Both meetings agree on that call for peace. To talk more about this, we have with us Edgar Segovia from the Wazoo Front in Paraguay. How important is it for the Latin American and international left to be able to meet like this?
It's very important. As the Wazoo Front, we have been giving a lot of importance in recent years to our participation in this forum. The Sao Paulo Forum has become a reference point for the left, for progressive forces and social movements who have joined the forum as a way of bringing together the ideas of what we want for our Latin America. So the forum is important not only for Paraguay, but for all of Latin America.
One of the main topics for this forum is the strengthening of peace. It has often been said that our continent is one of peace, in spite of the various conflicts it is experiencing. So what's your view of this?
There are indeed a lot of conflicts, but we, as socialists, are in favor of peace for Venezuela, for Colombia, for all countries. We reject and condemn all kinds of foreign intervention into our internal conflicts. Now, of course, there are always going to be problems, but in the end, the political parties and countries have the autonomy to fix their own differences, with their own policies, through dialogue. Peace is very important right now, and the last thing we need is a foreign intervention, mainly from North America.
How is the situation for the left in Paraguay now, after Lugo's impeachment and now with the government of Mario Abdo, who's been aligned to the right-wing policies of Piñera and Duque? How are the perspectives for the left in Paraguay today?
We're still strengthening the Wazoo Front, which was created by former President Fernando Lugo. He is now a senator. In the last elections, we increased our parliamentary representation in the Senate. Obviously, we are in opposition to the right, which has regained power with our current president, Mario Abdo. He is aligned to former President Horacio Cartes and also has strengthened relations with Bolsonaro, Macri, and Piñera. They all belong in the same line, the hard right, which doesn't recognize the social achievements made in previous governments. In Paraguay, for instance, there were a number of achievements in health and education. Now we are worried about the erosion of human rights and other fundamental rights that are essential for democracy.
We thank Edgar Segovia from the Wazoo Front in Paraguay. We will keep you posted with the latest details from this 25th edition of the Sao Paulo Forum here in Caracas.
We move on to Peru, where a massive fire swept through the Cayo district of Lima, destroying close to 200 homes. Flames could be seen consuming whole swaths of the neighborhood as firefighters and locals battled the blaze. Residents say that the fire spread so fast that people barely had time to leave their homes before they went up in flames. The number of casualties remains unknown, as does the cause of the fire.
There are more or less 150 to 200 homes that have been burned here. This whole area has an average of about 1,500 square meters, made up of rustic materials like wood and cardboard, and that prevented us from initially controlling the fire. Right now we're trying to control it, so it doesn't spread to other homes in the area.
According to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, about 150 people are believed to have died in a shipwreck off the coast of Libya. Another 150 were rescued by fishermen and returned to Libya by the Coast Guard.
But we understand that around 300 people left Libya from Al Homs and came into trouble off the coast of Libya. They were initially rescued, some of them by local fishermen, who were then joined by the Libyan Coast Guard. Together, they were able to save around 150 people, but from what we understand, another 150 people have tragically lost their lives at sea. And if that's right, that would make this the worst tragedy on the Mediterranean this year, and it highlights once again the urgent need for action to address the Mediterranean situation, to ensure that more lives are not unnecessarily lost.
Tunisia's president, Beji Caid Essebsi, has passed away. He was 92 years old and was the world's oldest sitting president. Essebsi was hospitalized on Wednesday, but officials did not say why. Last month, he was also admitted for what officials said was a severe health crisis. Earlier this year, Essebsi announced that he would not participate in the country's November elections. The 92-year-old won Tunisia's first free elections in 2014 following Arab uprisings across the region. Following Essebsi's death, the Speaker of Tunisia's parliament, Mohamed Ennacure, has been sworn in as interim president. The Prime Minister has also announced that a state funeral for the late president would be held on Saturday. Elections are expected to be held on September 15th. 3 explosions rocked Afghanistan's capital, killing at least 15 people and injuring dozens. 8 employees of the Ministry of Mines and Petroleum were killed after an attack on their bus, minutes after a suicide bomber blew himself up a few meters away, killing at least 7 others. The third blast happened when a car was blown up by unknown assailants. The Islamic State group claimed responsibility for the first 2 blasts, while the Taliban claimed responsibility for the third. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has said that his government remains open to negotiations with any country as long as they are done in a manner that respects the sovereignty and dignity of Iran.
We will never miss the opportunity for negotiation. As long as I'm responsible for the executive affairs of the country, as long as I'm president, I announce that we are always ready for fair and legal negotiations with complete respect to Iranian nation's right and dignity in order to solve the problems. But at the same time, we are not ready to sit at the table of surrender under the name of negotiations. We totally understand the meaning of negotiation and the meaning of surrender. We do not allow for surrender, and our nation also does not accept it. Our constitution does not accept it too, but we have always been ready for fair and respectful negotiation, which leads to a fair result, and we are ready for it too.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Spain might be headed for its 4th national election in as many years, as the parliament has rejected leader Pedro Sanchez's second bid to be confirmed as prime minister. Sanchez has until mid-September to win parliament's backing. However, his party said that they would give up trying to install him if he failed to secure confirmation this month. The Socialist Party won an election in April, but fell short of a majority. It needed the support of the left-wing Unidas Podemos to be confirmed, but the 2 parties failed to reach a deal on a coalition government. Negotiations became deadlocked on the role Podemos would play in a coalition government.
Y lamento mucho constatar I'm very sorry to confirm that the parliamentary blockage remains. Ladies and gentlemen, lawmakers, since my first address I said that my goal was to form a government, a progressive government with a premise which was to do everything possible so that Spain's government doesn't have to depend exclusively on support of separatist forces. Before anything, I have to say that between left-wing forces, the government investiture should have been guaranteed since from the first instance, because election results of April 28 and of May 26 left clear the will expressed by Spanish people that the government should be led by the Socialist Party.
The United Kingdom's newly appointed Prime Minister Boris Johnson has chaired his first cabinet meeting since his appointment. His cabinet reshuffle has seen the appointment of far-right pro-Brexit ministers, including 13 newcomers, more than half of Theresa May's old cabinet, including leadership rival Jeremy Hunt, quit or were sacked by Johnson. Western Europe is facing its second record-breaking heat wave in a month, undoubtedly due to climate change. Temperatures reached 42.6 degrees Celsius in Paris as a red alert was issued in northern France. Germany also had its highest ever temperature at 41 degrees, while the UK recorded a record temperature for July of 38 degrees Celsius. A report just published in Nature notes that the world's temperature has increased to its highest in 2,000 years. undermining climate skeptics' questioning of mankind's role in global warming. 1 year ago, Greece suffered the worst wildfire disaster in living memory. 102 people died in Mati, outside of Athens. This year, the community was determined to remember those it lost.
On the 23rd of July 2018, the most devastating wildfires in Greece this century killed 102 people. Hundreds of homes were burned and thousands were forced to flee. This year, a tribute to the victims was planned, but a new fire at Rafina, nearby, raised the alarm and the program was changed. Luckily, the fire died out and the commemoration went ahead.
We are here to honor the memory of our dead, of all who died in that fire, and above all, our 16 neighbors who died right here.
Neighbors headed down the hill following the route of the fire, which destroyed everything. They reached the little port of Mati, where a year ago thousands of people saved themselves by jumping into the sea. There, they paid homage. Relatives of most of the dead were present.
We lost people, we lost our nature, we lost homes and property. But we are still here, in our wounded paradise. What made this place so magic? Because for us, it is still magic in spite of that catastrophe.
The most moving moment was when they read the names of the 102 who were killed. Friends, relatives, and neighbors couldn't hold back the tears. As well as remembering the dead, those present had something to say to the authorities who turned up. They want someone to take responsibility, something they say has never happened.
They burn us, they abandon us, and absolutely nothing has happened. We're still waiting. We escaped by just 5 minutes. The house was burning and my cat saved us. He woke us from our siesta and we fled, my wife, my children, and myself.
The commemoration was almost cancelled because of the new fire. It brought terrible memories, but it also raised the question, how sure can we be that something similar will not happen again?
We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at tellusenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Our English, I'm Camila Escalante. Thanks for watching.